So as you can see on the slide, the title of our talk is, our topic is teaching and learning oral genres. So I'm going to begin by providing some broad context for the work that we're doing in this area, and then Craig will discuss one particular component of the project in more detail. And that component, which we're very excited to share, is called the PASS. Do you want to switch the slide, Craig? The Precedents Archive for Scholarly Speaking. And those are just some screenshots from this web tool that we have built that we're very excited about. It just launched last week in time for the conference. It is a website that archives and organizes videos of students giving class and conference presentations. And Craig will give you a bit more of a tour of it in a few minutes. And our goal with the PASS, as with our intervention more broadly, is to promote equity and inclusivity in the teaching and learning of scholarly speaking. So I'm going to frame the project by relaying a conversation that I had with my 8-year-old a few weeks ago. She had a class presentation coming up, sharing research she had done on a chosen country. She chose Italy, and she was terrified. And I asked her why she was so nervous. Because my ears go red when I talk in front of the class, and I'm worried everyone is judging me, she said. I said, I know it feels like everyone is judging you, but let's think about the purpose of the presentation. Why do you think Ms. Kwan asked you to do it? She thought about this so I could share what I learned about Italy and teach it to the class. Exactly. As someone who's been thinking a lot about classroom speaking, I found this conversation fascinating. It was incredible to see how quickly my daughter was able to shift her understanding of, and therefore attitude toward, an oral presentation. She had assumed that a presentation is a performance to be judged. And of course, it's hard not to feel that way. We all do to a certain extent. But with a little prompting, was able to see that it could be, and in fact is meant to be, something else entirely, an opportunity to share knowledge. Thought about this way, having red ears is kind of beside the point. This prompting is at the heart of our project. We hope that by inviting students to focus on the situation of scholarly speaking, specifically by providing this web resource that shows students, scholars coming together, orally sharing research, that we can shift student attitudes toward and improve their abilities in scholarly speaking. Something that we've been thinking about is the way that speaking is often considered a tacit skill. So the prolific writing scholar Peter Elbow has said, though I often think of my students as novice writers, I do not think of them as novice speakers. Rather, I imagine that they have been speaking to a variety of audiences and for a variety of purposes for many years. And Elbow's certainly right. Yet, for many students, academic speaking comes with a new audience and a new purpose, and they find themselves in unfamiliar and often terrifying territory. Our aim is to focus attention on the novice academic speaker and to bring the deep apparatus that we have for inclusive pedagogies to their specific concerns. In the United States, scholars working on communication across the discipline, which is abbreviated as all sorts of things, CAC, CXC, they've begun some of this work, and anyone familiar with CAC or with its counterpart, writing across the discipline, will recognize that the question I asked my daughter was informed by thinking about situated genres. I asked her to think about the purpose, the situation of giving her presentation, and then let that dictate her approach to the genre. Our hope is that by helping students to become familiar with the situation of scholarly communication, by exposing them to examples of students participating in academic conversations, they will become familiar with the audience and purpose for university speaking. Many of the resources that students easily have access to take a one-size-fits-all or a very common top 10 tips approach. And Craig, if you want to move the slide, we have some examples that I very quickly grabbed off the internet. These tips address, as they exacerbate, we argue, students' fears about speaking in class. And while this differs by institution, certainly by country, and we'd be really interested to know what it's like in Edinburgh or other countries that, or places that people are at in the room. But in our country, in Canada, and our university, the University of British Columbia, and as we've sort of observed, many universities in Canada primarily teach speaking through extra credit courses, online resources, clubs like Toastmasters. So that is, speaking is not taught as a disciplinary communication practice, but as a skill for professionalization. And student fears about speaking in class are related to the assumptions they make about what successful professional speaking looks and sounds like. This spring, when I asked my first year writing classes what they thought made a good oral presentation, the most popular responses were make eye contact and memorize your script. And this was just an informal discussion. Craig has some stats to share from more formal research that we did. Of course, these strategies work well in some genres, like the TED Talk relies on both, but they're not what we model or expect in most scholarly disciplines. I'm doing neither right now. And noticeably absent in the student replies was everything we had discussed that year in the context of their writing. These students had been learning to write by reading scholarly essays and explicitly unpacking their discipline-specific scholarly moves, not by Googling the cosmetic features of a good essay. Our approach corroborates then the authors of this 2017 Teacher's Guide, slide please, Oral Communication in the Disciplines. We need to help students understand communication within the disciplines rather than communication as a generic skill that works in the same way in every situation. Our work aims to address student attitudes towards and competencies in specific speaking situations by bridging two separate conversations on communication. The first is the conversation that I've mentioned, taking place among teachers of writing and communicating in the disciplines, that emphasizes discursive form as attendant to situation and understands the academic situation as one with knowledge making or the communication of research at its heart. The second is a conversation specifically focused on public speaking anxiety, or PSA. In the 90s, the communication scholar Michael T. Motley explored the idea that PSA could be reduced if speakers considered what he called a performance communication continuum. Slide, please, Craig. That is, oh, maybe just keep hitting it and it'll drop down. Thank you. That is, Motley and his collaborators tried to convince speakers to shift away from the performance orientation, where, as you see, the goal is to make a positive aesthetic expression, and instead move toward a communication orientation where the goal is to share information with the audience. Speakers were found to be more confident when they could be convinced to view the audience, quote, not as a group of evaluators, but rather as receivers who respond to the speaker's message. This is basically what I asked my daughter to do. Motley developed a therapy through which to change a speaker's cognitive orientation. Yet critics have observed the limits of this as a therapeutic approach. One study talks about how, this was sort of good idea in theory, but then when it came to it, the speakers had limits to what they could understand as to how to be communicative. We propose that it is not therapists, but teachers of scholarly communication who are best situated to facilitate this shift. And importantly, that the shift toward a communication orientation should not rest on the individual speaker, but more broadly on our pedagogies and attitudes toward speaking. Our classrooms are places where students are asked daily to communicate formally or informally their disciplinary knowledge and to participate in ongoing academic conversations. So these are the places to implement this shift. I'll turn it to you, Craig, to keep going.
Thanks. Yeah, so to help shift students' understanding of the scholarly presentation's purpose, we have created a web resource, which Moberly mentioned briefly, the Precedents Archive for Scholarly Speaking, or PASS, which is an online archive of recorded scholarly presentations with accompanying curricular supports. The site's goal is to help students recognize the central features of academic oral genres and integrate them into their own scholarly speaking. So our genre theoretical approach to teaching scholarly speaking invites attention to both precedent and practice. The website provides students with precedent videos of scholarly speaking with guidance on how to integrate the key scholarly moves they see as they practice speaking as scholars. This approach also responds directly to students' desire for sample assignments. Students want to see precedents, as writing instructors know from the frequent requests we field for model essays. To help us plan the website, we surveyed students from Moberly's first-year writing courses, both before and after their oral presentations, for which they were prepared in part through a guided exposure to precedent videos. So 81% of students responded that the preparatory activities made them feel less nervous about giving the presentation. and 92% of respondents told us that seeing additional examples of academic presentations would make them feel more confident about scholarly speaking moving forward. So with this in mind, we developed the path, which I'm going to pull up here. Can everybody see that? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we are currently piloting. This is our beta version of the web resource. It's Mobilely Imagine it launched just last week. And I'll give a brief tour of the site here, and Moberly, maybe you can copy the URL into the chat so that people in attendance can explore on their own at their leisure. So yeah, if you click here to the Scholarly Speaking Archive, this is the heart of the website. So our initial archive consists of videos recorded at the 2021 University of British Columbia Coordinated Arts Program's first year undergraduate conference, or CapCon, which was held online the past April. So we have these student videos here, and you can click on one, load, and you can watch the video. One of our lovely presenters. Well, we will grow this archive in coming years. The CapCon presentations have many strengths as a starting point for our collection.
All right, so I'll be discussing historical orienters in Western.
Let's go back to the archive here. So the video covers major genres of scholarly speaking, like the conference paper and roundtable presentation. And the website is designed to allow students or users to select among these genres with a single click. So you can click on the conference presentation, roundtable presentation, classroom presentation, or full panel. CapCon is also an interdisciplinary conference, so students can explore similarities and differences between various disciplines in the social sciences and humanities. Again, all the videos are tagged, so users can click to filter the presentations from a chosen discipline. If you want to watch from the English discipline or geography, just click on these helpful tags up top. And while we know that students benefit from examples, we also recognize that simply providing precedent videos without further guidance has limitations. As anyone who has handed out a sample essay only to receive a stack of cookie cutter papers can attest, there's always a possibility that a precedent will be treated as a template to be emulated by rote. In our archive, however, students will interact with a diversity of examples rather than a single model. Moreover, students will be able to opt for a guided entrance into the archive. So these are our guides here. Here again, the genre theoretical approach is instructive. In keying in on scholarly rhetorical moves specific to disciplinary genres, this approach empowers students to discover their writerly voices as they learn the building blocks of academic discourse. So our website offers students a series of guides highlighting the essential features of academic discourse with an eye to the specificities of the scholarly speaking situation. Let's load up one of these to quickly have a look at. So the guides all begin with some general commentary and usually a practice exercise, or as we see here, a reflection prompt to get students thinking about the challenges presented by the scholarly speaking context. Students can then click to expand for more information on specific topics. How, for instance, does one identify their sources without the benefit of footnotes? Or how does one establish the state of knowledge on a given subject without a bibliography? You can check out the summarizing the conversation link here. In these subsections, students will find some combination of definitions, explanations, strategies, tips, reflection activities, and practice exercises, as well as a compilation video of excerpts from presentations showcasing different approaches to the chosen problem. So here we have a series of lit reviews that students did. We have a couple of different options they can watch through. Additionally, the site features, Additionally, the site features an instructor guide to help teachers use the website in their courses. So here, instructors can read up on the scholarly rationale for the project and the scholarly context situation, or else access a growing archive of downloadable assignments that make use of the website content. I can see everyone now. Hello. So As mentioned, the website is in its infancy and we're currently brainstorming next steps for its rollout and expansion. But one additional feature we have in the works is an archive of interviews with our student presenters, where they'll discuss their experiences with and feelings about scholarly speaking. So it's both normalizing anxiety and offering strategies to reduce it. And this speaks to another of our project's values. It's important for us that a resource aimed at undergraduate students features videos of their peers. While we foresee adding presentations from graduate students in later phases, an archive of more professional scholarly presentations could present barriers to entry for undergraduate students. Indeed, we like the videos we have for their imperfections. They are not always polished, professional presentations. We feature speakers with a range of spoken English language abilities. Students make mistakes, mispronounce words, get flustered. But on the whole, the presenters are able to effectively communicate their ideas. We believe that seeing these examples will help students shift their thinking toward the communication orientation on Motley's performance communication continuum. And this returns us to some of the stakes around equity that Moberly mentioned at the outset, as we believe that changing student thinking about the goals of academic oral discourse away from an anxiety about flawless delivery and toward effective scholarly communication increases accessibility and inclusivity. The genre-theoretical approach to writing involves a conscious shift away from writing pedagogy focused on grammar, mechanics, and other formal measures that have historically been used to police written academic discourse by privileging forms of language use that divide along lines of nationality, race, class, and ability. A turn toward orality has been a feature of attempts to make writing courses more equitable and inclusive. As Cynthia Self argues, integrating oral forms into the composition classroom can be empowering for members of marginalized groups, whereas a myopic focus on writing instruction has often been used to discredit other cultural forms of expression and knowledge. And we support the move away from an overemphasis on skills in both writing and speaking instruction, but caution that care must be taken not to present orality itself as a way to get beyond prejudicial linguistic strictures. We caution against that is thinking of speaking when compared to writing as inherently progressive. In practice, performance-oriented paradigms for giving effective oral presentations often uphold prejudices towards proper language use and introduce new ones specific to oral communication around accent, tone of voice, and appearance. A recent study by Fernando Sanchez, for instance, explores how public speaking textbooks, quote, discussion of voice and professional dress privileges cisgendered bodies. And it's not hard to think of how such discourse reinforces other harmful norms. Rosina Lippi-Green's work, for example, focuses on how speakers with accents can face discrimination, even though, quote, accent has little to do with what is generally called communicative competence, or the ability to use and interpret language in a wide variety of contexts effectively. Existing oral communication pedagogy thus often privileges manners of speaking and self-presentation that encode and reinforce inequities. I'm going to quick load up my slides again here to show some of the survey results from our survey. So such implicit messaging has certainly impacted how students think about scholarly speaking. Offered a list of goals for oral presentations, 100% of our pre-assignment survey respondents ranked speaking loudly and clearly as important or very important. And that's on par only with sharing research and knowledge. 60% ranked dressing and acting professionally as important or very important, placing it on roughly even footing with teaching the audience something new and getting feedback from the audience to develop new ideas. Our intervention then invites students to reconsider these priorities in a way that challenges the exclusionary assumptions underwriting received ideas about oral presentations. And finally, we believe that making scholarly speaking pedagogy more equitable and accessible will also lessen student anxiety about oral presentations. Asked what concerns they have about giving oral presentations, 74% of students on the pre-assignment survey flagged an anxiety about making a mistake while speaking. That was the #1 answer. Almost 20% of respondents also indicated an anxiety about being able to communicate properly in spoken English. Existing paradigms for oral academic communication often equate clear, confident delivery with competence, which can ironically create anxiety and thus reduce student confidence. Motley's therapeutic approach to public speaking anxiety invites speakers to shift their thinking away from this emphasis on confident delivery and toward effective communication, but does not offer a way forward for developing communicative competence. Our contribution aims to help students build the competencies needed for successful academic oral communication, which might, we hope, instill sustainable confidence in their scholarly speaking skills and ultimately in their classrooms, their universities, and the broader academic community. Thanks. I'm just going to put up a slide with some contact information briefly here too. Hello.
I think you're muted, Denise. Oh, or.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
I was just going to say, we have about 5 minutes for questions. If Joe or Elaine have any questions for Moberly or Craig, I've been taking notes here, as public speaking is always a challenge at any stage of development, including mine. So this is absolutely fantastic. So thank you. Joe or Elaine?
Not
ahead,
so much a question. The first thing I want to say is just that sounds like it would have been a super useful resource when I was an undergrad, and might still be a useful resource not as an undergrad. Do you think there's any risk of it also? So obviously people pick up a lot of good habits, and I agree with everything you've said on reducing anxiety. Do you think there's any risk of bad habits being passed along? Like, are you likely to screen your videos, or do you think you're more likely to put comments on there like, this is great, good. But
It's a really good question about whether or not you could pick up bad habits. It does, yeah. I mean, what we filmed, we're building the archive and we're sort of still in that process, but there are about a dozen full-length videos on there that we culled from more than that. So we did a certain amount of sort of quality control in terms of things that, but at the same time, there's major differences in the levels of confidence, eloquence, clarity, all those kinds of things that we think should be modeled. I don't know. So I think I think that's part of the ethos of the project is there isn't a right way to do it. And the speaker needs to see what habits they want to pick up. Like, they can watch that and they think, I like that, I don't like that. And it's sort of not up to us to do that full sort of quality control, like I was saying. I don't know, Craig. So I think it's a good question, though.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks for the question, Joe. But yeah, I do think that students are going to make those sorts of judgments themselves. And again, that is part of the project, is not that these aren't models to be emulated, but instead precedents that can be, I guess, evaluated, and students, we're calling on them, and especially in the activities we've designed on the guides, it's really calling on more evaluative work, saying from what you see here, what will work for your context, what wouldn't. I guess that's focusing a lot of the time across disciplines. So what will work from an English presentation that wouldn't work in a geography class. But at the same time, I think getting students to think critically about what they're seeing in that way really hopefully will move them away from thinking about these as simply models that they can copy.
Yeah, okay, thank you. It makes a lot of sense. And as you were saying, it's not really anxiety if people are getting it right 100% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Well, just conscious of the time, Elaine, you had a question, and we have about 1 minute left of the session.
Okay, I was just wondering whether what level of students would be able to access this. I'm thinking about the fresh first year students who just come to university and they are really worried about having gotten lots of first presentations. Would this be something that they could use?
I had a little trouble hearing you, Elaine, but I think you were asking about the level, and currently the students featured on there are first year students, and the students we're piloting the website with are first year students. So it is about, I teach, I'm the chair of a first year program. So this sort of came out of my work with first year students and thinking about the needs and anxieties of first year students. We are making it available to students across the university. And we're talking, as Craig was saying, about, does a fourth year student want to look at a first year student model, or should, as we build the website, should we be including upper level students and graduate students to increase it? But right now it really is primarily a first year tool.
Fantastic. And is it open to other universities, or is it only for your university students?
It is wide open. That link can be shared. We are working toward different thinking about licensing and about whether or not we want to, what parts of it we want to be open access and what parts are licensed. But you can go on that link and you can share it with your students, and we'd love to hear from you if you do, because it's sort of a quiet launch, but it's not at all limited. So go for it.
Thank you. What a wonderful tool.
It is absolutely phenomenal. In fact, I've bookmarked the URL, and I want to thank Craig and Moberly for their time. And for those watching this later, the link is speaking.arts.ubc.ca. And thank you again. And the next session starts right now, so we'll see you there.
Thank you, Denise. Thank you for coming.
Bye.
Bye.